ship sailing from the old Strand. I'm Stephen Badcock, a third generation printer in H.J. Badcock Commercial Printers. The firm was founded in 1945 after grandfather was kicked out of the Channel Islands due to the Second World War, and we've been in Barnstaple ever since in various locations. Started off as purely letterpress printers, but now obviously we're litho, digital, and loads of little computers in grey boxes, which is not what I grew up learning. You know, I know the old wooden type, metal type cases, etc. And I expect you'll see a few of the bits and pieces in a moment. This one here, yeah, I first remember this as a very young child in the late 60s, and it was always sat upon grandmother and grandfather's desk in our original, well, the one I remember down in 29 Silver Street, on top of an old chappie's roll-top desk, where my grandmother used to sit behind the window and do telephone answering and all the invoices. We've carried it with us ever since. Quite a few Barnstaple and Ilfracombe firms, so I don't actually know where it came from, but it was obviously some hotel in Barnstaple back in 1945. When I first walked into the shop, the amount of paper that was lying everywhere, and some of the presses, an old Albion press, which was a large poster press for doing obviously posters, auction bills, etc. 2 or 3 little Arab platens, and a Wharfdale, flywheel guillotine, and obviously as a young child I was not allowed anywhere near it because it was quite dangerous. There was no health and safety back then. But you know, that's my first memories of going in there and making a nuisance of myself, basically.
So was it the whole family who were involved in the business?
His father, grandfather, my grandmother and my Uncle Peter at the time. But originally, when he first started up in Barnstaple, it was called Badcock and Hillman. A chap called Len Hillman, who was a typesetter on a hot metal machine. But after father had done his national service, grandfather bought him out and made it a completely family firm, which it has been ever since.
Fantastic. That's really fantastic. So, I'm thinking of perhaps getting you to talk a little bit about the changes. You mentioned briefly some of the changes you've seen between letterpress and now.
Well, I always say to people, if my grandfather was to walk in our new premises now, he wouldn't recognise it as a printing works. There's basically not much mechanical stuff left. It's an array of grey boxes linked to a computer, which is not how I grew up remembering printing. That's why I still like to keep the old letterpress and various bits for sentimental reason, although you can still use it today. You know, it's a sort of a craft that will never go out of fashion, I don't think.
Okay, do you want to reveal the mystery of what this thing does?
What we have here is what's known as a lead cutter, which my grandfather used to call people that worked in the newspaper business as lead droppers, because everything was set on a metal slug from a typesetter machine, and to space it you use these leads. And obviously with newspapers everything's set in columns of different widths, and this machine was used to cut the spaces to the exact size, which is a very simple tool, but no, it's an antique piece. No longer used, I'm afraid. And here we have what's known as a letterpress block, which has got the image printed on it. You might just be able to see it. This actually came from the 1952 Barnstaple Town Guide. I have the whole set of these somewhere in the premises, which I haven't managed to put my hand on yet. But you know, they still pull up a really good image, even today, 60 years later. But that looks like a picture of the very old Strand with the Queen's and houses there, and a load of traders with horse and carts in the foreground and sailing ships in the background. And like I say, I have the whole collection that appeared in the actual town guide. And this is the actual desk that I was talking about earlier, where my first memories of my grandfather and grandmother used to do all the business accounts. And it's pretty bad to repair, but it has fond memories for me, because I used to be able to sit there and answer the telephone sometimes. Well, grandfather used it up until he passed away in 1984. And we've carted it around ever since for sentimental value, but you know, that was one of my very first memories of going into the print business as about a 6-7-year-old, and I say it could do with tender loving care at the moment, but it's one of the things I don't think we'll ever get rid of. This is a type case which contained tiny individual letters in different font sizes. This one is a double caps, and you get upper and lower. And one of my very first jobs in 1979 when I joined the firm was all the jobs that had been printed. It was called dissing, which is redistribution, of taking out each individual letter and putting them in the appropriate hole, basically. A very, very thankless task, but something that had to be done, and seeing I was the youngster, that was my job, and it was very, very boring. And we'd always been letterpress, and in 1981 we got what I still consider to be a very, very superior letterpress machine, at Heidelberg Platten. And I remember my father going to an auction down in Plymouth and bidding for it, and my grandfather saying, no, you know, £1,000, that's an awful lot of money, you know, and we actually got it for £900. When it was installed, it was up to date for me. It was pure modern technology. Nowadays, you know, you very rarely see them. But I used to have hours of fun cleaning it, and I was allowed to work it eventually, and I did, after several years, break it. And that cost another £1,000 to put right. So I learnt my lesson there. Do what it says in the manual.